Just wanted to say a few words ahead of this video because these videos come off the back of a huge lot of Eaglemoss Star Trek ships that I picked up recently, and so I've put up all the duplicates on eBay for you to have a look at, and I'll include links around and about the place. So if you've got any sort of interest in getting hold of a few of these to have a look at them for yourself, you can do so for a while at least, because it looks like they're not going to go flying off the shelves. I've tried to price them quite reasonably, so do please go and have a look, and without further ado, I will get on with the main video. Cheers. Just realised I needed another one in the bag to cover me for one more day this week, so I made a mistake of looking at this issue. And it's not a mistake at all, but I'm feeling a little bit emotional. I first saw All Good Things with a group of like-minded people at university in 1994. So it does have a sort of a special significance for me in that we all whooped at exactly the same moment in the episode, which was, really, really lovely. And it was just nice to sort of read some of the background in this issue, I actually got this issue with the XL version of the 1701-D from All Good Things, the future version, the Dreadnought Enterprise. And it's actually really fascinating reading this in the light of having watched Picard Season 3, because a lot of the concepts that were being bandied around for the All Good Things script were then actually half used in Picard Season 3. So I'll just run you through the contents of this magazine. I only have the small model here to show you because I don't have, strangely for me, I don't have the small model of the Dreadnought. I have the big model but not the small one. So now I've got that in my Enterprise collection as well, which is nice. So if you're unfamiliar, this was the sort of 2-episode climax to Star Trek The Next Generation at the end of its 7th season. And it detailed an upgraded Enterprise D, basically, in the future time period that Picard occasionally found himself in. So it's still the 1001-D. This is an alternate timeline, so it doesn't fit with the Picard chronology, or indeed even the Generations chronology that they were writing at the time when All Good Things was being written as well. So, ironically, they knew at that point that this was definitely not going to be the D because of what happens in Generations, but they still went with it. So now I'm saying now it's got, I'm not sure how different how different this is to the standard, but it's going to be a little bit taller because of the third nacelle. 1012 crew, which feels more to me, I'm not sure. Warp 13 sustained, new warp scale, just like with the Pasteur, so that's fine. And of course the commander was Admiral Riker, and he saved the Enterprise from being decommissioned by declaring it his flagship, because he got to pick his flagship. So as a result, and because of deteriorating relations with the Klingons, not only did he get it preserved, he also got it upgraded because it had to be more battle ready than had previously been the case. So as you can see, third nacelle along the top here means an additional phaser strip on the top. They've souped up those impulse engines. They didn't used to be that pronounced. More gun emplacements at the top of the saucer section. Great big phaser cannon strapped to the bottom of the saucer section, which was awesome. Random winglets on the nacelles there, and a great big new sort of nacelle pylon strut to support the new third nacelle. But just sort of comparing this look with how he looks in the Picard seasons, where of course he is now an admiral. It's quite fascinating to look back on this and think how many years have passed between that sort of 94 final show and then getting Picard nearly 30 years later. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, sort of souped up. I thought the impulse engines had changed. They're definitely more pronounced than they were. They look more like Excelsior impulse engines, actually. Again, sort of duplicate nacelle. Here's the phaser cannon on the underside there. And we saw some three-dimensional space combat, which was still unusual in Next Gen. But we got that in the last episode of the season of the entire series, which was hilarious. And of course we had Q coming back, but Q apparently wasn't always a dead given. What happened was they were throwing story ideas at Michael Piller, and he didn't normally get involved with deciding on the writing at this point, but apparently he decided with this he needed to. So they had ideas about the Borg being in it, but that got cut out. They had ideas about Q going bonkers, but then they sort of changed it so that it wasn't that. Then they tied it back to Encounter at Farpoint. They were going to steal an Enterprise from a museum, which of course we kind of got reprised in Picard, but not quite. But that I thought was quite funny that they actually eventually kind of did do that. And obviously, they went right back in time. They said they couldn't redress all the sets completely accurately. So there are some inaccuracies. But, effectively, they did a pretty bloody good job of it. And I hadn't appreciated that Cole Meany, who plays Chief O'Brien, was an ensign. He was a helmsman in Encounter at Farpoint. So actually having him on the bridge was bang on in continuity. They just brought him across from the Deep Space Nine set. So that was very clever as well. Fair dues to them. But we could have had Hugh, but we didn't have Hugh. We just got Q instead. And there's the phaser cannon giving it some welly against the Klingon, what would of course be now be known as a Naegvar class of Klingon cruiser. We've got an aged Worf, which again we've seen another example of an aged Worf. That was a rather different take on the character. Got Data with a cat with a sort of streak in his hair. Again, not quite how things turned out. But it was a really lovely episode. And I was also reading it was funny because when they do the pull-out shot right at the end from above the poker table, which I think everyone kind of remembers is the culmination of All Good Things, they actually took the ceiling off the set because they figured it was the last time they'd need it. So they literally just sort of chopped it off so they could get the crane of the camera down into it so they could do that pull back and up away from the table. So that was really, really funny and really well played as well. So, fair dues to them. And apparently they were doing this under incredible pressure because they were trying to do Generations at the same time. So how they pull these things off in such a time scale, I have no idea. But it just shows how close they were to the characters, to be able to pull that sort of thing off. So here we have the final ships, and of course, for the Enterprise D, it was fairly straightforward. They literally just stuck stuff onto it. It's because they wanted to give it the impression it was a souped up version, basically, and they just sort of, that's fine. One more nacelle, a few more guns, that's fine. And then, of course, I've already looked at the Pasteur here. Apparently, this was just sitting in someone's garage. Because apparently ILM's Bill George had just made it for fun. so he had a studio-ready sort of motion control model sat in his garage that they just took out the garage and used. Brilliant. I love that. And then, of course, we had the Naegvar, and this was the only ship they actually did from scratch for the final episode. And, of course, we would see that later, but at this point in time, it's more like a future Vorchak class. So it's just a future Klingon attack cruiser, but they just went with this and sort of, kind of loosely based it off the Vorchat, but or that was the original plan, but then they just kind of went their own way with it. Why is there not another final? Oh, of course, this must be because it's a special issue. There isn't another. I was expecting there to be another page normally when I turn over with adverts and stuff, but that's it for this particular issue. It's nice that it's a full size one though. Often with some of the specialer boxes, you get sort of small, shrunk down issues, but it's nice that you get a sort of full-size issue with it. So let's have a look at the model itself. Now I think there may be some elements of this that are a little bit damaged. I'm not quite sure, but you see what you think, because can you see just here? I'm not sure. I think that should be solid-ish. That I get the impression there's a couple of little bits that have perhaps been lost from that. But remarkably, the little sort of whatever they are, I don't know if they're more phasers, probably are at the top. There seems to be right. This Enterprise also packed a cloak for the first time. Well, I say first time, not technically the first time, but in terms of day-to-day usage, it was the first time that it packed a cloak. It's resisting me. Ooh, okay, got it. It's close. That's why I prefer the metal saucer sections. They give you a little bit more to grab hold of. Annoyingly, I've just lost my supporting light, but I've still got my backup, so that's okay. Let's get this set up fast before I lose anything else. So you can see it's as you would expect, it's very, very well done detail-wise, and that's kind of inevitable at this point. But you can see the great big sort of phaser strip the phaser cannon rather, going all along there. And it's literally it's sort of the first detail you're shown on screen. But you've got these funny little winglets that they've added onto the nacelle pylons there as well, for absolutely no apparent reason that I can discern. But it's a very, very clever sort of in-universe expansion on the original Galaxy class design, just to sort of give you the idea that it's a sort of a later version of the D, which by rights ought to have been retired, a long time before then. You can just about make out the those sort of enhanced impulse engines beyond the struts there. They're kind of in shadow. But it's nice to have that to add to my collection of Enterprises, and I don't know why I hadn't really thought about getting I'm not going to assume that that's the right place. I bet it's supposed to be held in the saucer section. So I think it's probably supposed to be here. I was going to stick it right at the back, but I suspect it's not supposed to go there. I suspect it's supposed to go here. But as I don't have its issue, so I don't know if I'm logicking this out. Perhaps I'm wrong. Is it supposed to do? That doesn't feel right to me. That feels like it's too far forward. Just have another quick. Oops, that's not good. Let's just have another little look at this, perhaps without the base, and see if I can. I'm sure I've had this problem with an Enterprise before now, where you're trying to figure out if it will actually go past the secondary hull to allow you to get it into the onto the saucer section, because the stands aren't always very obvious in terms of where you actually place things. What I don't want to do is break it, obviously, because that would be a bad thing. It would require me to rebuy a stand. I think I've got it, actually. Yeah, I've got it. Assuming that is the right way to do it, I've got it. I think it probably is, because if it's reached in there, that's definitely more of a challenge than average, I would say. But there she is. So once I've had a bit of a rejig of my various shells, because I'm going to need a hell of a rejig, having got all of these into the equation, that will be joining my Enterprise selection. And it's nice to have that at this scale to sort of round off the collection, because I do try and stop when I reach what I call my sort of original generation of Enterprises. So I wouldn't. I mean, that having been said, I would include the E, but technically the E predates this one. But then equally, this is a completely alternate timeline that doesn't now exist. So you pays your money, you takes your choices, I suppose. But yeah, nice to have it. Nice to have it for sentimental reasons, if nothing else. So that's probably very nearly it for this week, actually. So I'll say cheers for now.